25.25, and unbelievable. Um, Talking about Bitcoin and altcoins in the crypto market, and what we're seeing is a rather incredible thing, which is that the VEPs, the volatility, the entropy, the probabilities, and the statistics of Bitcoin and altcoins are moving along the way that the VEPs do, uh, very nicely to the downside and the upside. Right now, they've been moving along very nicely to the upside this week so far, which again is no surprise. At the outset of this week, I said to you, that we're on the intersect of the power mean and the RMLR on the weekly, and also there was on the daily and on lower time frames as well. So having nice significant moves relative to the different time frames is not a surprise at all. And we're still very much within the range of having nice significant moves. For example, on the weekly time frame, we definitely could have another nice move or more than one over the coming 0 to 4 weeks. So middle of May to end of May, we could see very nice moves until then. Whether that's to the downside or the upside, obviously, if you're a low time frame trader, you don't really care which direction it goes, right? Um, frankly, I've always been a fan of when prices go low. I don't understand why people aren't, but I mean, I do. But if you're a trader, you should love the low prices because you get to acquire more for less. You get to have bigger positions for less money. So it's nice. And then you have upside gains when the moves happen. And you get to, if you're longing those upside gains, you get to take some nice profits and then hopefully it reverts back to the downside. But in any case, there are periods when there's extended buy pressure. And I know all the Bitcoin bulls are going, what are you talking about? I can hear you sucking your teeth. I can hear you gnashing your teeth and getting angry. How dare you? You got to want Bitcoin to go to 1 million. Listen, Bitcoin is probably going to do that anyway at some point in the next, 10 years, maybe more, maybe less. Who cares? But that's not how we trade low time frames. High time frame information, like what might happen in 5-10 years, has nothing to do with what's happening today, right now. Today, right now, we're trading what's happening today, right now, and markets are constantly changing and updating. Now, that isn't to say that as a low time frame trader, I never look at the big picture, because of course I do. And the big picture is very clear. Crypto, Bitcoin specifically, and altcoins, certain altcoins, run the markets at this point. What do I mean by that? Well, how can you say that when Bitcoin is just a tiny little, couple $1 trillion market? That's true. It's not so big. I mean, there are companies worth practically as much as the entire Bitcoin market, right? Like Apple or Nvidia or whatever. These companies are worth about $1 trillion. Put any two of them together, they're worth more. Right? So how can Bitcoin be running the market? Well, consider how many governments, hello there, how many governments are buying Bitcoin as much as they can, and other assets, right? Solana, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, etc. The U.S. government is buying those 5 assets, right? And they're figuring out some way to do swaps, basically, with existing assets like gold or oil or whatever they got, so that it's a zero cost acquisition, essentially. It's like a swap, which they believe is a way to do it that won't freak out the public and say, hey, why is the government buying crypto instead of doing whatever it can to strengthen the dollar, etc. Well, the US government has made that decision that they're going to be acquiring Bitcoin. And guess what? Lots of other governments are doing the exact same thing. State governments in the United States, I think there's like 28 states already that either have or are in process of having plans to buy Bitcoin and altcoins as strategic reserves for their states or treasury assets for their states, right? And we're seeing that. And we know that, there's already a bunch of states that are doing it, but there's many more lining up to do it just in the US. And then there's, of course, whole governments that have already legalized Bitcoin as legal tender. For example, France many years ago already made it possible to pay bills with Bitcoin. And El Salvador, obviously famously, uses Bitcoin as a main currency, right? In addition to their own currency, you can buy things with Bitcoin. Not every shop accepts it not because of the law. The law says they're supposed to accept it, but because they may not have the technology in place, whatever. They may not have the point of sales lined up with either the Bitcoin wallets or Lightning Network or whatever they need. So not every shop in El Salvador accepts it yet, but in theory, they're supposed to. And increasingly, although there have been plenty of cases where shops that used to accept it in El Salvador no longer do, there are also more and more shops coming online and vendors coming online in El Salvador who do accept it. And it may take some time, but officially El Salvador is a Bitcoin-friendly country. And there are other countries as well around the Middle East where Bitcoin and crypto are seen as very important assets for the nations in question, and they are buying as much as they can, as fast as they can. Central banks are also doing the same thing around the world, right? They're also ETF issuers in multiple countries where you have massive financial institutions that basically run the markets, and they're seeing things like the Bitcoin ETF having the fastest growth of any ETF in the history of ETFs, right? In less than like a half a year. I think it was less than a half year, maybe even 3 months or something crazy like that. Within whatever, say even within a year, it doesn't matter. Bitcoin's inflows of cash, right, of money going into the Bitcoin ETF has grown by, I think, like 5 times as much as the next highest ETF of all time. And why does that matter? It matters because we're seeing a massive amount of interest in an asset that's only 16 years old that is growing exponentially and is seeing a tremendous amount of support every time they issue, basically more ETF purchases to new buyers. We're seeing the money pour into the market by the hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars within like a week. Of course, there's outflow too because people cash out their profits, etc. But overall, Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs are doing staggeringly well compared to what people actually estimated that they would do. And it is a sign that the entire financial system is shifting and that we're seeing that shift happen faster than anybody assumed. Of course, the smart money knew that this was going to happen like this because they're the ones putting in the money to do it, and they move the markets. So since they've determined that crypto is the future of finance, whether you like it or not, it is. Anyway, that's what I'm going to say about that. Talk to you guys later. Peace.